The reality of life for a great many Australians is an uncomfortable one. This shouldn't be a country where you feel that, where you feel those financial pressures all the time. And it doesn't matter if you're a self-funded retiree, if you're a young person that's working, if you're a middle-aged person who's working. None of us feel like the joint is going the way that it should. And while the Prime Minister wants to pretend that that somehow, coded language, is all Trump's fault, the reality is that this government, while it claims to fix things, it does things that are all about buying votes. The reality is, remember, they turned around and they gave and then took away some support when it came to paying your energy bills. Sure, they'll invent a new version of spending that money again just before the election. But remember, they started off by taking $1,500 of assistance away. They've just found ways to redeploy $200 million here or $500 million there. But they've never really been able to turn around and say the $1,500 that was there at the start is still the assistance that's there at this moment.
Quick favour before we get stuck in. If you are enjoying this breakdown, hit that subscribe button and tap the notification bell. It costs nothing, takes 1 second and keeps the channels alive. Cheers if you did. Now back to the show.
But there's something even more serious that probably is beyond government, and it's about us. It's either how we feel personally or plenty of people in our family, let alone friendship groups, are feeling. And that is the issues in and around loneliness, in and around that sense of despair. And while this is not as much fun to talk about as ripping into lefties, it is a real problem, and I know that there will be plenty of people who are feeling this right now that are watching us live or watching this video whenever it appears in your feed. And so more evidence to all of this today. It comes from the Turnbull Times that Australia's life dissatisfaction levels have doubled as wellbeing poverty reaches new highs. Now, this is not because people don't have enough cement in their diet and they don't harden up, but here's the deal. 2.2 million Australians 15 years and older are living below the wellbeing poverty line, with a share of people reporting very low life satisfaction doubling over the last decade. In 2025, 9.7 or 1 in 10 Australians rated their general satisfaction with life at 4 or below out of a rank of 10. This is from the Australian Bureau of Statistics and their social survey. This number compares with 1 in 20. So again, essentially a doubling of the problem since this was first looked at, or most recently looked at in 2014. Now, the reality is that governments want to pretend when they're oppositions that the government is the whole problem. And then when they eventually get to government, they have to pretend that they are offering the solutions. When the reality is that there are many inputs that governments choose to make that see a lack of support. We've seen that around things that were available, like telehealth for mental health support. That's been cut by this government. A little later tonight, I'm going to talk about the number of kids that are on a waiting list for a taxpayer-funded mental health support. Now, again, there'll be part of you that says, well, hang on, none of that was there when I was a kid and my life was just as tough. Sure, I understand, but the reality is the kids aren't all right. Every survey tells us the kids aren't all right. The kids' helpline have more calls than ever before, and that's not because they're a bunch of sooks. It's because there is an awful lot of pressure that exists on all of us as individuals, us as families, and failures in the wider society. This report description continues that amid an explosion in support for far-right and populist politics, those reporting life satisfaction scores of 4 or below are more likely to feel alienated and disempowered by the community and express lower support for multiculturalism. Do you like that little sting in the tail? Only 15% of people who are experiencing wellbeing poverty feel that they have a say on important matters affecting their communities, against the average of 32% across all Australians. And this is where it does get a little bit more political. Now, winner take all is, generally speaking, the attitude of politics. It is particularly the attitude of the current mob of people that are in charge of the Labor Party. You've seen the brutality in Victoria, that if you were a small business during the COVID time, you've seen the brutality in Victoria if you are one of the 70% of Victorians who believe that there should be a royal commission into the $15 billion worth of corruption that apparently is in and around the big build.
Here is the headline stat. Life dissatisfaction has doubled since 2014. Back then, 1 in 5 Australians rated their life satisfaction 4 out of 10 or lower. In 2025, that number has jumped to nearly 1 in 10. That is not a vibe shift, that is a structural fracture straight from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. So what is driving this? Buckle up, because it is a trifecta of pain. First, economics. Energy bill relief worth $1,500 vanished, then quietly limped back half-formed, like a magician who forgot the second half of the trick. Second, mental health. Telehealth cuts and blown-out waiting lists mean children needing help are stuck in a queue longer than the checkout at Bunnings on a Saturday. Kids' Helpline calls are surging, and that is not a coincidence. That is a siren.
But also, I would suggest that the second part of what I just read to you is also that sense too of the theme that I've spoken about a long time, but I've certainly been focusing on since I found that badge of the Labor Party. Remember the old badge? Put Australia first, the Australian flag. That's how Bob Hawke used to appeal as a Labor leader during times of an election. Well, now if you display the Australian flag, you're either a bogan or a racist. And if you say put Australia first, then somehow you're part of far right-wing politics. If you believe that anyone can come to the country as long as they love the country as much as everyone else who's in the country, again, somehow you're dog whistling in support of monoculture as opposed to the diversity is our strength excuse that is thrown up about the multiplicity of changes. We've gone in recent years from public parades on Australia Day to those being pushed aside and banned. A shame about the celebration of a national day, because people who don't want any celebration of any national day try to pretend that the national day we focus on is too problematic, too difficult, as if somehow the 13th of October would be any better on any one of those issues. If you are one of those that would be anywhere near that survey that I've just spoken about, yes, it's money. Yes, it's family breakdown. Yes, it's cultural breakdown. But it also is a sense of disempowerment that comes when you're on the wrong side of a government's agenda. When they say that having pride in what we took for granted yesterday is a culture war, when they turn around and change it. Again, you have not changed. They have changed. And because they have changed, they turn around and say that you and I don't understand modern Australia as it is, as if we don't have a set of eyes to see how buildings get bigger, cities get busier. The things we talk about with our friends change over the years because someone at the other end of the table is always going to blow up if you bring up that subject. Well-being is about a lot of things. Living with a government that you didn't vote for is difficult because they come up with new ways every day of reminding you why you never wanted them to be there. But the sign of a leader is somebody who understands that those who didn't vote for them have just as much right to care about the direction of the country as the majority who end up voting for them. Again, the Prime Minister today, pretending that I formally recognise your right to feel reality about economic hardship. But then in the same speech says that if you want to discuss any of those cultural things that they changed, you didn't change, you didn't vote for, you weren't asked about, that you're somehow fighting a needless and pointless culture war. No. I say it for the 800th time tonight. They changed. You didn't.
Now, here comes the twist. Only 15% of people in well-being poverty feel they have any say in their community's decisions, compared to 32% nationally. Meanwhile, flying the flag or saying "put Australia first" gets you labelled a bogan or worse. Patriotism has been rebranded as a personality disorder. Dissent has been rebranded as disobedience. That is not governance, that is gaslighting with extra steps. And here is the kicker. When people feel unheard, unseen, and culturally sidelined, they do not just get sad, they get radical. Disempowerment is the on-ramp to populism, and pretending otherwise is like ignoring a smoke alarm because you don't like the noise. So what is the fix? Not nostalgia, not reactionary shouting matches. The fix is leadership that treats criticism as feedback, not treason. Real resilience doesn't come from the top down. It comes from communities actually being heard, not managed. Well-being is not just about a bank balance, it's about recognition, voice, and belonging. Thanks so much for watching, Australia. We'll see you in the next one.